got that Virtus Pro jersey on. Actually, 2 layers of Virtus Pro gear on right now. Looking good in it.
All these guys, they're kitted out in their new team stuff, man. They're looking good, looking fine as we get ourselves into Crimson Court. Kind of an interesting map to start out with here because we talk about HeRoMaRinE being a fairly aggressive Terran and, you know, timing based, and this is such a good map for that because there's only really one avenue of attack straight down the middle. The edges of this map don't open up until much later in the game, so I think that's something that HeRoMaRinE can really utilize to help himself push forward, get into better positions, and just put himself in a great spot. It's going to be interesting to see what Astrea does to work around that, because a lot of the tools you might typically use to work around Terran pushes are taken away because the breadth of the map is just non-existent.
No, absolutely. I think that's a really good call-out, because when I think of Big Gabe, especially playing versus Protoss players in that era of domination that he had versus Protoss, a lot of it is those kind of big 2-base pushes where he just puts the pressure on. Sometimes it's not even necessarily super committed. He has a 3rd base or something behind it, but it's those, I'm in your face, your 3rd base is getting tank siege push or something, and you're just losing everything. It's these kinds of maps that Gabe really hit a stride on.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised it almost comes into the series because there is 9 maps in the map pool, and don't get me wrong, this might be one of your typical, like, I'm happy to play this PvT maps from Astrea's point of view, but against HeRoMaRinE, I'm like, I actually feel like this might have been one to get rid of, so we'll see what Astrea does. You said he's obviously someone who comes in with his own style a lot of the time. We wonder what that will be, because this map allows you to innovate a little bit as well. You can expand upwards through the gold base, or you can expand out to the triangle and keep the map narrow for longer, eventually open up rocks with different access points. You can even be super crazy and move forward to the rich Vespene gas, which is way further forward, but it allows you to control the middle of the very narrow area, so there's just so many cool options as this Reaper needs to find a getaway right now. He's going to jump down, but the Adept is good to get the kill, and Gabe losing the Reaper early. Good Adept catch there from Astrea. Nice to get rid of that straight away. Yeah, our North American hero is doing pretty well so far in this first game. You can see Twilight Council was not quite scouted, so technically there could be a Stargate or something opening, but Twilight Council I think is going to be something that Gabe is at least going to be considering as a very, very viable option here, as I think it's a fairly standard thing to do these days. Ooh, Adept taking a lot of damage over here for the Marines, but finds a kill on one of them. Might actually try and go after the SCV now. Does not manage to get it, though. Ends up shading on out to safety, and that first Cyclone's also going to be popping on out, so Adept is not going to be long for this world. Nope, just going to be able to grab that as the Cyclone will take a few shots and does continue its trek across the map. So going to make its way out down to the bottom left-hand side as Blink is the option from Astrea, bringing that through, getting an additional gate right now, and this is where we question, how many gateways do we build? How aggressive do you want to be? Super aggressive, or are we just going to take that 3rd base nice and quickly off of the 2 gates? The Cyclone Scout sees no battery, but there's not much one Cyclone can do, but it does open the doors to where you might attack now that the Medevac joins up. With no battery here, this natural is a very, you know, pleasant point of attack for the Terran. No, absolutely. I mean, imagine that the Medevac comes on into the main base. Probe, by the way, it's long distance mining this gas around the top. That's painful. That's going to slow down some gas mining for sure. But yeah, imagine like if the Medevac drop draws the units from the natural over to the main base, then there's no battery over at the natural, or you could just go for the full-on push with all of your units. There's 3 Stalkers over here with no shield battery. This is such a dangerous moment here for Astrea. Gonna use the, oh, this is the Medevac, but we will try and use the Widow Mine to zone out some of these Stalkers. It will survive, and that's really huge. The pylon actually being used for a warp, and if we'd been able to target that down, that would have been nice. The Widow Mine gonna get a couple of the probes. Astrea is gonna pull off a defense. It was a little bit dangerous. I feel like HeRoMaRinE, if that fight replayed a second time and he approaches a bit different, he might have been able to even get more done. But now Astrea is on the hunt, and with those Blink Stalkers, you can, of course, go hunting. Blink has just now finished, and that means you can get out a Cyclone lock on range very easily, and that enables you to just keep on chasing super aggressively. Blink forward as well. Both Cyclones will fall line as slight blockers to help, and HeRoMaRinE is losing out big time in the early stages. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think at the end of the day, there were 3 probes that did go down, but I think Astrea really only ended up losing, what, 1 Stalker in exchange for pretty much all of those units. He even got the Medevac at the very beginning of that fight. Those were some phenomenal exchanges there for Astrea overall. Yeah, no, you love this as a Protoss because now you've got freedom, because you're actually in the natural of the Terran play as well, so you're actually dealing damage, and you're going to be able to blink back across these minerals. You've got an easy escape path, and that's just beautiful, right? A bunch of SCV damage. You're going to be able to keep a lot of these Stalkers alive. You're tacking up safely behind it, and there's just no concern because you know you've depowered the Terran in such a big way so quickly in this game. That is absolutely huge for you. Oh, absolutely.
Templar Archives now finishing up over here for Astrea. 5 gateways, or a couple of 8 gateways being added on. Storm being added on. Astrea really is getting into that next stage of the game, and once he has Charge, Storm, and all these other things, he is truly going to hit a different level of power that the Protoss players are always looking for in those later stages. And like you were saying, Gabe doesn't have any windows to do anything before that point. So if Astrea really does feel comfortable and confident, he's getting to the next stage without taking big damage.
Storm has been such a huge factor as well as of late, and if you guys are watching the regionals, Astrea had some of the most disgusting storms of this generation of StarCraft players, I want to say.
Yeah.
There were some ridiculous games. I think he played against Killer Zone. There was some absolutely disgusting storms. So seeing him go Storm here, this has kind of become the new thing, right? To kind of go, you know, Blink Stalkers into Charge, then get Storm as your tech. This used to be a thing a while ago. It can be a bit flimsy, right? Because if you're initially defending with your splash damage of a Storm or two, and they miss, you can be dead. But people have gotten so good at figuring out just how to manipulate this build order to keep yourself safe enough to get that Storm up in a safe way. And just having Storm this early can be so good. It's so tough for the Terran to deal with it because they're so far away from Ghost still. So I love it from Astrea, and we'll see. I think this is the perfect time to do it as well, of course, because he defended so well early.
No, absolutely. There's just simply less firepower for Gabe because of all the units that went down earlier on. So if there was a game that you feel like you could safely get away with this kind of Storm play, this would definitely be it. Raven is going to be able to come in, get a couple of probe kills here or there. We got a High Templar warping in maybe for feedback. Not quite close enough, so it doesn't quite manage to land it. Maybe eventually. Okay, does eventually get it, but still, a couple of probe kills. That's really what Gabe was really just looking for.
Well, the Ghost Academy is on its way up. It has to be. That's the tech choice. It's teching time now as you're about to move towards the third base. So you have 2 medevacs going to fly straight, kind of down the left side, so we're going to hit that left-hand side of the map. Astrea is taking the rich Vespene gas in the center as well and just opening up rocks so he has a good access point between all of his bases. And a few Stalkers here keeping track of the main army, but let's see what this drop on the left side can do. Astrea has to run on over here. He loses a few probes straight away. Nothing to really shut down those medevacs just yet. The couple Stalkers that are showing up are just not enough. So we just get in, get some damage, and get out, and that's a big win for HeRoMaRinE. Just little things that add up, right? I think it's a big win mentally because it's like, hey, I'm not just being kept back at home. This is a big storm drop, though, and actually HeRoMaRinE could not find the way out. 12 SCVs dead. That was actually a beautiful drop from Astrea.
Yeah, bringing HeRoMaRinE down to just 42 workers. It's a pretty low count overall. And HeRoMaRinE, I feel like he's going to be struggling economically quite a bit soon because his third base, I mean, it's now starting to move on over, but if you're moving to your third base and you only have 44 workers at this stage in the game, it's kind of an awkward spot. Your opponent is actually looking to grab their 4th base and everything.
Oh, those Storm drops are back. Just getting even more of those SCVs. HeRoMaRiNE's on 40 workers, by the way. After those losses, that's a pretty huge deal. Just as he was ready to more or less saturate his third, now he's resaturating his natural. So big damage done from Astrea, taking big control in this game so far. And look at this, now he's going around a couple different directions. This area is still blocked off by minerals. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to do too much there. Otherwise, I would have kind of loved the pincer movement. Maybe he's even just hunting for the drops, still being there, and like looking for a chance to run back in. Not finding anything. His main army is on the right side center, which means he can make a dive if he wants, but a couple tanks set up defensively. I'm not sure if this is really the go time for Astrea for a big engagement.
Yeah, he is going to try to commit over here regardless, though. He has a lot of storms available. Big storm on the right-hand side, big storm on the left-hand side. Feedbacks on those ghosts, but is there enough of a buffer? It doesn't seem like it matters because the storms reign supreme through so much of HeRoMaRiNE's army, but at the end of the day, it really does come down to the fact that there's not enough of those zealots, those stalkers. It looks like some of the ones that ran around that you're talking about, they weren't there for the fight.
It wasn't the time to take a big fight because he'd split up his army and he hadn't regathered it all together. And it was only really somewhat okay because the storms were that good, but that's also because HeRoMaRiNE realized the opportunity that he could just dive in. He saw that this was a weak army. That kind of gave Astrea a bit of a better fight. Now HeRoMaRiNE takes position. He's going to siege up this rich Vespene base, so takes that gas out immediately. Auto turret down in the mineral lines as well. So we're losing probes as we go. Probes are still mining here, so even more probes going down, and HeRoMaRiNE is suddenly just taking complete control of this game 1.
It really does feel that way, as there's only one High Templar that was out on the map when we looked at the unit counting station. And now Astrea has to find a way to break through this. Can he circumvent some zealots around? The Widow Mines are going to make things so awkward, but the surround does come on in from both sides. Astrea does look like he will eventually clean this up, but it is already looking a lot more costly than he wanted.
These couple of Widow Mines trying to burrow back up top, and there's no observer here, so the Zealots are going to get blown up by those mines. Couple more shots coming through as HeRoMaRinE is forced to retreat, but it wasn't cheap from Astrea. He had to give up a lot of units to be able to make this happen. He gets there in the end. Auto turret dropping down again. A couple of Zealots will just clean that up, which is nice. Rather than the probes taking shots, it looks as though that will be the end of the Raven as it gets brought back through the center. A feedback on one of these goes, but an EMP available, so the Archon will just disappear. And now we continue to chase through. The Prism sits there with a couple High Templar inside, but they do not have energy. One of them dies in trying to storm, and HeRoMaRinE just has too much. What Astrea doesn't have is those tankier kind of Zealot numbers in the front. He just doesn't have the buffer or the storm energy right now to really make this a useful army. Finally, a few more Zealots. That's what he's needing, and that is going to buy him once again just a little bit more time.
Yeah, and I mean, Astrea does have a small little upgrade advantage. He has 2-1 versus just the 1-1 right now, but you can see the resources lost, that Astrea is absolutely bleeding out so many additional resources. And Gabe has actually been able to resaturate that work account we were talking about earlier on. He's had his third base that's gone uncontested this entire time. Astrea hasn't been able to put any kind of pressure there. It really is just Astrea taking a lot of hits right now, and he's able to stabilize his base for a little bit, but HeRoMaRinE is not done.
Pushes down to the bottom base where we just see Zealot stalk away. Nice storm. That's going to weaken everything up, and now Astrea says, okay, it's chase time. All those ghosts in the front. A few Widow Mines at least going to be the saving grace. Buy you a couple of seconds. A couple of the ghosts are now able to get away. And with Widow Mines burrowing, HeRoMaRinE is going to make a getaway. Creating that distance gives him the chance to clear this out.
A really beautiful small micro move there, by the way, at the very end from HeRoMaRinE, where you were talking about those ghosts being on the very, very back where they were getting chased around by the Zealots. Gabe actually sent a couple of his Marauders forward so that they weren't actually the furthest back units, that the Ghosts were surrounded by a handful of Marauders, just kind of trying to keep them a little bit more protected if Astrea continued to commit. Love to see those little things, because that Ghost retention is going to be so big.
Yeah, absolutely huge players we do have. This Bioforce going to again deny this Rich Vespene gas. It's a lot of gas income you're denying by denying the Rich Vespene. That's essentially 2 gases in one. So that's a really, really cute little position to keep on taking. You see, we'll see Terrans on Crimson Court really push that position. TVP, TVZ, TVT if we get it every matchup, because that Rich Vespene is so easy to deny, and yet it's so good if it isn't denied. So that's definitely going to be a point of contention as once more HeRoMaRinE still playing through the center. And, you know, seen a great example of this map, which is even though we've started to open up different areas of the map, it's still all around the middle. It's still all about pushing up this one avenue. And that's all we're seeing from these two, because there's not really anything on the left or right. Like, yeah, there's a base there or here or there from Astrea, but HeRoMaRinE would much rather focus down the center where it's just so easy to push and it's so difficult to get flanked.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And I am kind of curious how the defense is going to be going for HeRoMaRinE now that he's trying to establish that forward center base, because Colossus and a couple of these other units may be able to put on a little bit of counter pressure here. Astrea may finally be able to actually put on some kind of pressure onto HeRoMaRinE's economy. And that's actually not just through that attack in the center, it's the Warp Prism in the main base.
Yep, just nice just to get a few little bits of damage done. Finally see Astrea kind of dealing some damage himself for the first time in a little while since those storm drops earlier. Prism comes through. It's more of a distraction than anything. We are going to be seeing this main army now pushing forwards. No tanks here to hold the position as much, so we might be able to actually get in with the Colossus. Here are the Vikings, though, to take that fight up from the top side. Widow Mine actually splashes the Vikings, gives the Stalkers an easier time. Colossus still going huge onto the Bio, but is it enough? One Colossus left now. The Bio took a dive forward. There's a lot more of it down the south, but there's also Zealots over there that are causing issues. One more Storm comes in, misses the mark. And we do have HeRoMaRinE's numbers still looking fantastic bio-wise. He has so many units.
And so many Marauders that can tank through a lot of those storms as well. This is definitely looking like it's going to start being quite problematic for Astrea if he's not able to get up that kind of critical mass of those splash damage units to actually push back HeRoMaRinE. That center base location is so hard for him to defend. He keeps bleeding out so many units in the process, and HeRoMaRinE, he's coming back in for another round, and those Vikings, they're eye on the prize for that Colossus.
Yeah, get rid of that Colossus so much the splash disappears. That one High Templar, I do not believe that has energy, and if it did, it doesn't anymore. There's one more to the top that got EMP'd a second after the storm came in. The Vikings get rid of one Colossus, but 2 more just showed up, so Astrea is still hanging on by a thread, and that thread of these little bits of splash damage, which are keeping on being cut away at by HeRoMaRinE. So each one of those he snips down, he gets closer to just pushing through and overwhelming, honestly, because without that splash, at this stage of the game, the Protoss is going to be in a lot of trouble. A couple Marines down south, find a couple of probes, So we'll just see those Marines clearing up there. And just nice to see HeRoMaRinE just looking elsewhere on the map, just like, oh, this could have been a free, huge bunch of mining denied if I'd, had a few more units or you had more probes there.
Potential flank coming on in over here from Astrea. He actually pulls back one of his armies just to try and time this out properly, and he does manage to get a pretty decent cleanup. Kills off a vast majority of the Vikings as well, and a big storm on the high ground.
Yeah, just going to be seeing HeRoMaRinE pulling back towards the upper right-hand side there. What happened initially is HeRoMaRinE went north, and I think that's a mistake because that keeps the surround going. You kind of walk more into it, whereas if he went up right back to his ramp, like there's no way the Protoss units can come from two sides there, so he almost took a step too far northwards, and that's what enabled Astrea to get such a good surround, and hence a really good fight. He did not dip below 190 supply during that, whereas HeRoMaRinE hit down to 170 or so, which is a big difference. It means that Astrea is going to preserve a little bit of a bank now, and that means that future trades, Astrea is instantly reinforcing, whereas HeRoMaRinE is still trying to build up that money.
No, you're absolutely right. We're starting to see those resources lost still kind of favoring HeRoMaRinE right now, but it is definitely evening up a bit more. The one thing I will say is that HeRoMaRinE is about to catch up with 3-3 on the way, close to finishing. Not quite there just yet as the armies do tease engaging against each other, but Astrea's had that 3-2 upgrade advantage, that one weapon upgrade advantage for quite a bit of this game, and that's going to be even up in a moment.
Yeah, that's very true. In fact, it's going to be... I guess HeRoMaRinE will have armor upgrade for a little bit longer. Obviously, Astrea again, more storms come down. Astrea again to this point where he's getting Prism Speed and DT Blink and all these tools which are just so annoying for a Terran. Like, this is really the dream scenario for a Protoss. You get all of these later game tools to just be an absolute frustration, as this planetary does just about fall. That is big, because if it hadn't gone down, that would have been a bit of a waste of investment from Astrea. Now pushing into the center again. This army not so good ones to get the EMP'd though, and so he has to go retreat, and once again, the pendulum is going to swing in favor of HeRoMaRinE.
Really does. A big EMP is also coming out on top of these cannons, on top of any shield batteries that might be over there, but shield battery overcharge is going to keep these units alive for a little bit longer. Simply not long enough, though, as the Bioforce does finally shut down and kill off all of the buildings over at this location.
Kind of wild. HeRoMaRiNE's been pushing towards this position for a long time. He's wanted to break up that ramp a couple of times. He's been punished by surrounds. This time he looked at the army and was just like, oh, if the Disruptor doesn't hit, you kind of just die here. And he was not wrong. The EMPs came across, the Zealots melt, the Archons were non-existent, and the Disruptor that was there got shut down early. So yeah, he just created an opportunity for himself, and he grabbed it with both hands, as now we see Vikings landed, Bio fighting, Ghost EMPing, nothing stopping. HeRoMaRiNE on top of this base. That's 2 Nexus killed in 2 minutes. There's now another Disruptor shot, but HeRoMaRiNE can focus on dodging these. That one does go off though, second one misses. Does HeRoMaRiNE want to keep fighting? No. He'll back away for the moment, but guess what? As he backs away, he'll find more bases to kill, and he's just chipping away at the control Astrea has on this map.
Yeah, Astrea cannot afford to lose the space, but look at that choke point he has to go through. He didn't mine out all the gold minerals, so it's a very awkward choke. Base goes down. There's one more base further to the right. I don't even know if HeRoMaRiNE knows about that one, but this is he's going to see it.
You know, one of the huge things here as well is as HeRoMaRiNE runs away, Astrea's army is not currently made for chasing. Disruptors are such good defensive units. They're terrible at chasing down armies. So that's the big impact, and again, it's really sad to see Astrea suddenly struggling so much, because it felt like he just got to the point where Shadow Stride was done, all of these cool late game things are ready, and it just didn't feel like his army was good enough any longer to actually stand the test of one true fight. If he survives that fight and actually gets all of this harassment in motion, this game becomes way more difficult again from HeRoMaRiNE. But now, with an almost 100 supply lead, HeRoMaRiNE is back to chasing. Disruptors are caught in this gold mineral line choke again. More damage done, and HeRoMaRiNE is continuing to look golden in game 1.
Yeah, just economically, it doesn't seem like Astrea has any kind of legs left to stand on. You can see 187 supply for HeRoMaRiNE. Astrea just in the double-digit supply, down nearly 100 at this point. So he is truly grasping at straws as the Doom drop comes in the main base, forces a recall. I'm not even sure if the recalled units are going to be enough to clean this up.
Yeah, I mean, basically relying on the Disruptor to be able to scare this off, but one Ghost ain't good enough right now. Second Disruptor shot does nothing at all. We lift, we leave, we can just go elsewhere. Guess what? There's a base in this low ground. Again, we've been chipping through locations. That's a good storm, but you're going to need more than one good storm right now, as Astrea does not have enough, and HeRoMaRiNE will take game number 1 after quite the duel between the two of them. There's a lot of moments where this game felt as though it turned into one player's favor or the other. In the end, HeRoMaRiNE just found that one deadly moment through the center, and once that one fight in the middle was won, it just never ended.
Yeah, and I feel like that one fight you were talking about, especially where he was able to catch all those Disruptors, to catch a lot of the army of Astrea, it really was just that awkward moment where a Protoss player says, I don't have a lot of Colossus. I don't actually have that many Storms. I think he maybe had like 1 or 2 Storms in the mix, but it wasn't that significant, overwhelming number where you really have to respect it a ton. It was just 3-ish Disruptors. There weren't that many at that moment. That is the most vulnerable point in time for a Protoss player to really be at. You need to have some of those supporting splash damage units.
There's a lot of good Storms. Like, this fight was really not the moment to go from Astrea, but those Storms saved him. And like I said, it's kind of funny because it felt like that was purely because HeRoMaRinE knew how good of a fight it was. He was so eager to take it. This is what I meant about him moving too far north when he could have gone up or right, and it just would have reduced the surround. He kind of got baited into what he thought was going to be a good fight. The one time he didn't have a flank Astrea on this position was this fight, and immediately you see the power of HeRoMaRinE. I think that's in part just the army that was here as well. There was no like long-reaching splash damage. There was no Storms really available. There's no Colossus anymore. And so he was a little bit more like, I kind of need everything to be together. And then it just allowed HeRoMaRinE to take a really good fight. And again, without the Disruptor count being up there, that kind of army wasn't going to work. Now, if you have 5 or 6 Disruptors, HeRoMaRinE can't make that move. But he wasn't ready with that Disruptor transition on time to really enable that. So, yeah, and from there, it really just snowballed into an avalanche.
Yeah, really nicely done there by HeRoMaRinE to kind of turn things around from what looked like a kind of rough start for the early game, because Astrea had a beautiful defense in the very, very beginning of the game against the drop harassment for HeRoMaRinE. He secured himself so much map control. He was able to put on his own little bits of pressure with the counter stalker pressure, but it just seemed like you were saying that mid-game stage, HeRoMaRinE really hit his stride and found the opportunity where Astrea was the weakest.
Took a lot of attempts, but we got there. HeRoMaRinE really stuck by what he knew was going to work for him eventually on the map, which was pushing that middle section. And again, if at first you don't succeed, try and try again. That was his motto in that first game. Let's see how it goes. In game number 2, we head to Site Delta. This map's very different because actually you do get spread out a lot in this map, so this is already going to look very different. Our Red Terror in the bottom right from Mouse, it is HeRoMaRinE.
And up here in the top left-hand side of the map, our blue Protoss player, our American player from Virtus Pro, he is Astrea. Go Astrea, hometown hero. Loving the American crowds. Always representing for our North American heroes. Got quite a few of them also in the open bracket.
So I'm super excited about the American crowd, man. I've been hearing, you know, about the American crowd and people getting to come to American events, and I've not been able to beat a one. I think that was my first time at an American event since like BlizzCon 2019 or like Austin 2018.
Yeah.
So it's been a while. Excited, man.
It's beautiful here, man. There's we got some Texas barbecue yesterday.
When you say we, that's
I
a very
say
loose
we, but you know, yeah. As someone with heavy dietary restrictions, I really enjoyed my Texas barbecue bread.
It was free though.
It was actually. I did eat a free meal.
Complimentary for coming in with us.
Yeah, I even got some pickles and onions for you guys. Yeah, you guys actually look like a good meal. You make it sound
so bad. I hate bread. I have know if your dragon actually ate pickles, onions, and bread.
Yeah, but you guys had a good meal.
It was good. Can't deny. I've been thinking about it for a long time.
Yeah, a lot of good food out here. Looking forward to getting some Mexican food as well. Hearing a lot of good suggestions about that as well.
I forgot about Mexican food. That's a great point. Astrea is coming across the map, though, from HeRoMaRinE. So, remember the last game already started a bit shaky for him. He lost that Reaper pretty early on, earlier than he would have liked to. So, something to think about as you see the early sentry from Astrea. I already feel like there's such an Astrea thing, because while we have gone early sentry in PvP a lot more, it's still not much of a thing in PvT, just because, yeah, the hallucination is nice for scouting, but it's such an early gas investment that is it really worth it versus just a Stalker into slightly faster tech? That sentry is definitely a bit of a cost. And, okay, it can deal with the Reaper, but it's not the best thing ever at dealing with the Reaper. And if you see this as the Terran, you're just like, okay, cool. I'm not going to do anything overly aggressive that requires pushing in, because I know you've got a force field. But I'm also not scared at all, because you're not pushing me with a sentry. So he can skip the bunker, and he can accelerate his build from there, and he can really choose, now that he knows as well, what he does off that factory a lot better, based around the fact that it's a sentry. So I think that's why the sentry is not as popular in this matchup, because in essence, it's still good. It's a free scout all the time with that hallucination. It's just the way the Terran can play around it, I think, makes them way more comfortable in the game now that they know it's Sentry play.
Oh, you're absolutely right. It is the ultimate form of a Protoss player saying, I'm going to be passive, you don't have to worry about anything. You just get to do your early game build order and put on your form of pressure before I have to worry, or before you put anything on me. So we do see that Sentry and the Stalker are going to be enough to push back the annoying little Reaper, but the St. Phoenix sets off the Widowmine. That actually is going to be a nice little, not only scout, but it also does set it on a cooldown for a little bit.
Yeah, probably off cooldown before the medevac drop comes, though, but
yeah.
Still nice to know there is definitely a mine in production, you know. It's something which you maybe don't have as a guarantee, although I guess this hallucination would have seen anything else. Stalker now pushing back this Reaper down the left side again, keeping this Reaper alive. Just because, more than anything, it might be a chance to A scout again, but maybe even pull something out of position here or there, right? So that could also be a factor.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It'll be fun to see what comes of that. We do have Blink more than halfway done, so Astrea's going to have his own kind of power units out on the map that are able to get a little bit of control, but the Sentry, wow, so far forward, is not going to get the scout out on that, it looks like, from the Sentry, but the Stalker.
Okay.
Stalker catches a glimpse, catches a second glimpse. He sees it.
He saw it twice, and now he's going to start running it back. Sentry coming back from the middle of the map too. Nice to have that Sentry forward, because obviously the hallucination gets to start further on the map as well. The thing is, now this medevac, he doesn't have to do anything. Just sit here, you know, and just chill a little bit. Yeah, he's going to turn around in time, though, so just sit here and chill, because it's going to keep those units in position to deal with it, and that's really powerful for you now as HeRoMaRinE, because again, it just means you're safe. You're not dealing with Stalkers poking up the ramp. You don't necessarily need to rush a bunker. In theory, if anything does come your way, it's because there's a gaping hole you can punish on the other side of the map, or it's not going to be as strong as it usually would be because it's only some of the Stalkers, and even then it might just be delayed. So you see them coming now. We'll see what we can do, but first Marauders are popping. We're getting our add-ons onto the factory and starport. We're looking comfortable across the board here as HeRoMaRinE. Let's see if Astrea can find anything with this blink pressure as he sets it up. In the next moment or so, he's going to be approaching this front door.
Yeah. Jose Phoenix did have the opportunity to maybe provide high ground vision if he wanted to blink up to the main base or something, but since he did end up losing that, and I'm sure he also doesn't want to just very obviously idle it right at the blink spot, so that would be a big reveal that the Stalkers are coming. So it's not going to go for anything like that. It's just going to wait for that first observer to come on forward, and I assume just rely on any kind of defensive weapons if that medevac decides to go back in.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I mean, at some point, you can't just sit there forever.
Yeah. So
as long as you're aware of it. And he still has 2 Stalkers here. Widowmine's 3 of them, though. It's going to be a little bit more complicated. And that Widowmine there does go for 1 probe. Just going to unburrow, reburrow. We can save one of these mines, absolutely. I'm just going to let this other one fire off as well, because it was taking a lot of damage with the detection nearby. Now we pull this one just at it near the natural. And again, now you've got this choice. You can actually hit the natural or the main base. It really is a decent combination of options. It's just going to keep Astrea scared in terms of, oh, which position do I actually need to be in? Right now, that medevac's not actually safe, so we're just going to come through, drop the mine. But it's going to have a moment or so where it recharges, and it will fire here.
Yeah, it gets 2 probes. I mean, not bad considering you know you're already going to lose it. Also did get a lot of the other Stalkers to pull all the way back home because Astrea was both busy dealing with it and I think maybe also looking to try and cut off the medevac's retreat path. Let's HeRoMaRinE move out onto the map.
Yeah, this is the scary part as well. The Terrans starting to split their units up, and you are just reaching your tech, so you don't have too much just yet. Would have been amazing to shut down a medevac early. Now you're going to have to probably bring even more units to come deal with this. Love that. Wouldn't mind just going to zone some of these Stalkers. They have to blink backwards, and that gives you time to hit the mineral line. We are pushing forwards with the left side army at the same time, so make sure we'll check in on that in a second. The Colossus is over here, and that means there can't be possibly that much defensively on the third phase. The super battery does not keep the Sentry alive, but it does buy a few seconds. However, now we're going to be able to dive onto the tech. The Immortal will not last too long. We recall over. Super Battery will now die. No Colossus here still. Widowmine's burrowing a Marauder in the main base, and Astrea is in trouble as HeRoMaRinE does what he does best, which is just find openings and timings early in the game, and he is so good with them, and this is just beautiful. 7 probes killed. I think there's still a Marauder in the main base going huge, and this is just adding up to be a wonderful start from HeRoMaRinE on a 40 supply lead already, and he is going to be loving this because the follow-up attacks are going to be so tough to hold.
Absolutely brutal damage for Astrea to be taken here in game number 2 of this best of 3, as now HeRoMaRinE's going to be truly in a great spot. 18 probes killed so far this game, and Astrea is really going to be struggling because Colossus are also those kind of units where you're really happy when you have them in a nice, evenish game, but when you start playing from behind, it if you feel like you don't have enough of a buffer, those aren't the big playmaker units. They're not a big storm or a big disruptor hit that can really turn the tide of a big fight. It's hard to make a really big comeback if you just are on Colossus.
That's very true. No, it's they're definitely kind of like, hey, we're in a good position unit, rather than like a, maybe if like the Terran's like ahead but somehow manages to run into the, like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, where do those Colossus make the comeback? It's a great point. As our medevac coming around to the bottom side, Probe might have just seen that. As now the Zealot definitely should see that. So Astrea at least has some heads up as to what's going on. Stalker's on the way to intercept. HeRoMaRinE, if he's sensible, should just leave it atop a high ground and just kind of let it chill there for a second. And that's exactly what he's doing. So the correct play here from HeRoMaRinE, just being patient, knowing he's being spotted, not over eager to force the issue, basically.
Yeah, it's just a pressure option that's going to keep Astrea a little bit mentally occupied. And medevac pokes in, sees, all right, Stalkers are still there. Cool. You have to continue paying attention to that. You have to continue leaving units over there. I have more units available to move around on the map because of how much damage I've done to you. So I can continue just pressuring other fronts, and you still have to leave a bunch of units back at home. It's just going to decrease the size of your army wherever else I attack.
Let's push from HeRoMaRinE up the left-hand side, looking pretty powerful. There's just a lot of units in this force. 40 army supply leads. He's got an armor upgrade advantage too.
Where are the Zealots?
Yeah, he needs a lot of Zealots, but there's only like 6 or 7. The Viking count, I was going to say it was only 2, but now it's actually like 6 or 7 as well, so that's actually amazing. Colossus will not last long here. HeRoMaRinE is very comfortable fighting this, and you can see it. He's just standing, fighting, trading, doesn't even feel the need to sort of step backwards. The super battery's too busy healing one Colossus, so the second one goes down. The Widow Mine drop looks as though it's just going to come over to the main force. Yeah, it's just overhead with that now. It's just going to bring some Widow Mines out and use those to zone as we go down this ramp. Look to deny a 4th base. Something you don't typically want to be losing as the Protoss player. Widow Mines into the Stalkers, and again, just delaying, buying time, dealing damage. All these things are just beneficial for the Terran player who knocks down Colossus number 3, a 4th base as well. We are losing SCVs on the other side, so there's some damage being done by Astrea, but it's just not enough. STT is actually, doing very well with those. I can't imagine that that's enough to completely turn this around, but maybe it's the beginning of something, because if Astrea does excel at one thing, it's excelling in chaos, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So maybe that's his way to just start slowing it down and just not dying right now. If he cannot die right now, maybe there's a chance, but that's a big ask.
Yeah, DT in the mix is going to be annoying and start to chip away at some of these units. The DT does get scanned. Another scan even used up front because looks like HeRoMaRinE just doesn't want to waste any time. A lot of these units are getting into the red, into the orange, into the yellow, so the Colossus is going to find some extra value with those Vikings landed, but at the end of the day, HeRoMaRinE doesn't have to kill the army, he just needs to kill the base, and everything else is going to kind of fall into place for him. He's continuing to push on forward, he's continuing to find the army, he kills off the Colossus, and it seems like he is eventually going to get pushed back thanks to the DTs and Zealots warping on in. Surprisingly enough, it looks like the supplies are closer than I thought. HeRoMaRiNE's still very much so ahead, but Astrea not as far behind in supplies as I thought he would be after all of that damage.
I think HeRoMaRiNE losing a lot of workers first definitely helps with that idea. The big thing, though, I think is also that HeRoMaRiNE took down the important units and not necessarily the easy to make that units that there was a lot of. Like, he could have just sat there and traded with the Zealot Stalker, and now there would be 2 Colossus on the map. But he dove for the Colossus, and now there's only 1, which means that the value of the army that Astrea is left with is really not as much, right? Like, it's much more breakable. We see the DTs doing a good job of just waiting for, the scans to fade before coming through again, and this was a successful little defense from Astrea. HeRoMaRiNE's lead definitely not what it was, and this is what I was saying about if you just survive as Astrea, you can kind of, really do very well in chaos, and that's kind of what he's getting right now. It's still a long way to go, but the fact he's alive gives him a go at it. It gives him a shot, and sometimes that's all Astrea needs, one shot to give himself a way back into a game.
No, Astrea can absolutely be a comeback king sometimes. It's a delight to see when he is able to mount those kind of comebacks, but DT harassment has been so annoying for HeRoMaRinE, not only just to the workers, but to the army itself. He forced HeRoMaRinE to expend quite a few of those scans, and remember that this has been a fairly aggressive game for the most part. HeRoMaRinE isn't exactly on a ton of command centers, right? He's finally now got his 4th command center, not even orbital command finished up, so he is actually expending quite a few of his very few scans available, just finding the DTs repeatedly, constantly.
Well, this is obviously HeRoMaRinE taking the chance to also just move towards his own 4th base, so gets himself up into that position. He's up 9 workers, double army supply. I don't mind that he slows it down just a second to just get that economy buffered up once again, because it can just go straight back to just, I'm going to trade, and I'm going to trade, and I'm going to trade, and just never stop, right? So, yeah, I kind of like where this is headed to.
Yeah, HeRoMaRinE looking to be in a good spot. Astrea adding on additional Immortals. How do you feel about that one?
Kind of like it. Honestly, Immortals have been a very valuable unit lately, like much more than you think, and against the right army, they can do so well. Like if it's just very Marauder heavy and the Immortals get to fight those, it actually is really amazing. It's like you don't think it's good in TVP because it's like, well, you need splash damage, but actually they're just so chunky and they survive a long time. So I don't hate it, especially because I feel like there's a point where your Colossus just have done enough. What I would love to see instead is just Disruptors.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day that might be kind of the better choice, but maybe Astrea feels it just needs bulkiness rather than the hero shot at the moment. Problem is these Colossus keep dropping, and if it's just like Stalker Immortal, then I don't like the Immortals, right? I like the Immortals as an addition, but right now they're kind of the bulk of the army, and that's becoming more and more of a problem.
I'm 100% with you on that, and it is giving me a few concerns here for Astrea's army, but I think Astrea's definitely been in a little bit of a gutter for a handful of minutes in this game at this point, so he's still looking for opportunities, and he is going to add on a couple of Disruptors now, which I do like as a decision. 2-2, by the way, did finish up fairly recently, and Astrea had like +3 weapons finished up for a while, but now finally HeRoMaRinE is actually going to be taking fights where he has an upgraded advantage.
Yeah, that's actually very true. Just getting that +2/+2. As now we kind of chase up here. I'm still looking for what part of this army is going to kind of keep Astrea alive. Like, I kind of think in the Disruptors, right? But then it's just the same as what happened in that previous game where we don't quite have enough Disruptors yet, so this first push is going to be so hard to stop. The first Disruptor shot was actually okay, but there's so much bio bulking behind it that this base goes down. You can't afford to just keep giving up 4th bases. That's a massive counterattack, but I actually think HeRoMaRine's going to have enough to turn those ults around in the picture-in-picture, so I'm not really too concerned about that for Astrea. This Disruptor does go down. The one that was firing does get the shot off, but every single time we're seeing Disruptors die, that's not sustainable for Astrea, and also is this fight not sustainable as Super Battery will not save the day. Vikings will begin to land, army is melting, and HeRoMaRiNE is cruising through to a victory.
Hands off the keyboard there for Astrea as he holds his head, he scratches it, rubs his face, and taps on out. HeRoMaRiNE, big game, 2-0. The Terran god who smashes Protoss left and right does it again.
Really, really solid stuff from HeRoMaRiNE. It was a very cool first game where it was back and forth a lot, but that second game, HeRoMaRiNE got an advantage, and you can just see how good he is at keeping that advantage.
Yeah.
He will not let go once he's got Unit Stranglehold. Big Gabe has a fantastic start here. It's going to be very fun to see him take on potentially a Maru or so in that winners stage round 2, of course. Maru playing against Shin right now is, I think Maru is 1-0 up at the moment, so looking likely HeRoMaRiNE might get a TVT there. Obviously, that's very cool because he's had a go at Maru a few times, and if he's feeling good and feeling confident like this series allows him to, I wouldn't say never.
No, absolutely not. And of course, Astrea is still going to be in the event. He's going to be going down to that lower bracket match where he's going to be facing off against some undecided Korean player up between Shin and Maru. So, should be another fun one.
All right. We are going to head straight over to the desk to talk more about that series.
That's right, thank you very much. A confident HeRoMaRiNE with a 2-0 victory here, but it was not as clean-cut as that 2-0 would suggest, as Astrea did put up a good fight. Joining me at the desk, it's Pig and Roddam to talk about this one. Roddy, I'm obviously in a situation where Astrea looked pretty good in that first game.
He really did. Typical Astrea, where he's like on the verge of dying. You're 5 base against 3 bases. I was like, man, if you hang on a little bit longer, it's yours. And he pulls off great hold after great hold. I was like, holy smokes, Max actually doing it. And then right when he's starting to win the game and he's killing a planetary, all the spellcast is exposed in the center of the map. And you really got to give to Gabe, man. He's so clutch, is so decisive. He will never be like, okay, I'll pick off some units and then I return because I just lost my planetary. No, Gabe just keeps on going. Entire army, 10, 20 HP, does not matter. Kills 4 bases, takes an 80 supply lead and wins the game. Absolutely love Crimson Court.
Yeah, that was such a good comeback. I mean, it's one of those things where Astrea is so good at fighting back from behind in the brink, but Gabe, as you said, seems to have his number, and this is historically the way it's gone between the two as well, where Gabe has that ability to just fight